of transition era. Stars like Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Israel Adesanya, Alexander Volkanovski. These guys seem to be towards the end of their careers. Their best days may be behind them. Several other champions like John Jones currently, Alex Pereira, they are up there in age. There's going to be a new wave of MMA entering, and I think we've started to see that with Ilia Topuria. I think it kind of felt like an end of an era with him knocking out both Evgen Volkanovski and Max Holloway this year. And it seems like a new era is, coming into MMA right now. I think we're starting to see those new guys now. But I'm going to give you my 10 fighters who I believe will be the biggest stars in MMA in the next, 5 to 10 years or so. I think we're going to see this new wave of mixed martial artists coming in. Some of these guys are already more established in the UFC, who are on the younger side. Others are still kind of on their way up. But I think these are going to be the biggest stars in MMA and the guys to look out for in the next few years. So at number 10, I have Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez is probably one of the more further along guys on this list. Diego Lopez is an outstanding fighter. He had 3 victories this year at UFC 300, UFC 303. He was the co-main event of UFC 303 on short notice, International Fight Week, which was a huge deal for Diego Lopez's career. And then UFC 306 against Brian Ortega, and he got a victory over a top 5 ranked opponent in Brian Ortega, which was fantastic for Diego Lopez's career. And he is really my breakout star of 2024. Diego Lopez fights in the featherweight division. That's a very difficult division. So I think it is fair to wonder if Diego Lopez is going to be a championship caliber fighter. Most far, Evliev's in that division. He seems like he could be a future champion. He just misses my pound for pound list. And I also think Evliev is going to be, he just misses this list as well. I think he's going to be a very talented fighter for years to come. I don't think his style is that popular. I think it's going to really take him quite some time to be a star, similar to the way Merab Dvalishvili just has in recent years. But Diego Lopez comes at number 10 because I think Diego Lopez is perfect for that BMF belt. I think he's made to fight for the BMF belt. That was really clear at UFC 303 with his performance against Dan Ige, accepting a fight on such short notice to begin with Brian Ortega, taking that huge step in your career. But then against Dan Ige, who was, a fighter who was in camp for much longer than Diego Lopez, even though he accepted the fight on just like 3 hours notice. But he was in camp much longer than Diego Lopez. He was in better shape than Diego Lopez. He didn't have to cut weight like Diego Lopez did. And Diego Lopez was willing to fight anyone, anytime, anywhere, and really took a massive risk for his career. So he, could fight in the co-main event of UFC 303. He kind of did the promotion quite a huge favor there. He was able to fight at the Sphere at UFC 306. So we've seen Diego Lopez on probably 3 of the biggest stages that the UFC had in 2024, and he performed in all 3 of those fights. And he already is a star for the UFC, but I think he is going to be a big star in the coming years. He just turned 30 in December. I think he's a very active fighter, and I think that's something that fans want to see. I think that's why he's so exciting. He's active, he's willing to fight anyone, and he's really entertaining. He's a great finisher. He has excellent power. Like that video where in the beginning of that UFC 306 fight, it looked like he knocked out Brian Ortega with one punch and woke him up with the other. So Diego Lopez is number 10 on this list. And heading in at number 9, we have Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel is probably one of the biggest names on this list right now. The UFC has really pushed his stardom. He fought on the main card at UFC 300, which was quite controversial. And then he fought at UFC 309 against Paul Craig, and pretty decent performance, but fans didn't love that performance. It wasn't really an exciting fight. But Bo Nickel did beat Paul Craig. He's kind of evolving his game still, particularly his striking game, and he's doing quite a good job of it. We just saw what Nakamura just had to go through at UFC 311. And he is a very established wrestler, and his striking was far behind the competition. But Bo Nickel striking is coming along quite well. But I think Bo Nickel really just hasn't been particularly active. And he does seem like he's been like someone that the UFC has forced on fans, and that's why he's not popular right now. But Bo Nickel is a fantastic wrestler. And I think he is, very well media trained. Seems like he's a good guy, and American fighter. And I think this is someone that's going to win over a lot of fans. It's going to take some time. The favoritism that the UFC seems to display for him is not something that fans love. I think that's kind of why some of John Jones's reputation has gone downhill, among other things that John Jones has done. But Bo Nickel is a very talented fighter. He's about 30 years, 29 years old, 29, 30 in that realm. And, Bo Nickel, his game's still evolving, but, he has a potential to be a star for the UFC. But I think I'd like to see him a little bit more active on his way up. He still really hasn't fought a ranked opponent, and I would still really just like to see him more active. Uh, at number 8, we have Tatsuro Taira. Uh, he is the only 2000s born fighter on this list, but he's a fantastic fighter, a lot of potential. He did just lose to Brendan Royval, who is much more experienced than him, but it was a really competitive fight. And I think this is the next flyweight champion of the world when Pantoja leaves the division. I don't think anyone in the flyweight division can beat Pantoja right now. I don't think anyone in the flyweight division can beat Pantoja in the next couple of years. I think eventually, for Pantoja to lose the belt, he's either going to retire or move up to bantamweight. But I think Tatsuro Taira is the next flyweight champion of the world. Coming in next, the biggest star in the UFC already, the face of the company, Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is one of the most dynamic fighters in the sport, no question about it. I love to watch Sean O'Malley fight. I think everybody does, especially when he's on his game, like he was against Chito Vera, Aljamain Sterling. But Sean O'Malley, I don't know if he's a championship caliber fighter anymore. That is very controversial to say. He's only 30 years old, but I think he's realistically the third best fighter in his division behind Merab Dvalishvili and Umar Nurmagomedov. I think if he moves up to featherweight, I think Ilia Topuria is better than him. I think Diego Lopez gives him a tough fight. Maybe, if Ilia Topuria leaves, moving up to featherweight, maybe Sean O'Malley's best option for his career because I think Merab and Umar are better than him. But Sean O'Malley is a really dynamic fighter. He is the biggest star in the sport right now. His brand is huge. His podcast, his social media star. Sean O'Malley is the most famous UFC fighter in the world right now. I do think Sean O'Malley's issue is, just I don't think he's going to get back to that championship status, and I think he's, those next couple of losses are going to hurt his reputation. He's always going to be a major star, always. That'll never change. But I think Sean O'Malley's, star power within the diehard MMA fan base will die down a bit when, I think guys like Ilia Topuria have already kind of started to surpass him a little bit as being the face of the company. But Sean O'Malley's not going anywhere. He's still going to be a huge star as long as he is in the UFC. Coming in next at number 5, I have Ian Machado Gary. Ian Machado Gary is definitely a future champion, in my opinion. I think he is a fantastic fighter. I think he's very skilled. He's very patient. Very technical. I thought he looked really good against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think training with Charles Oliveira and Diego Lima have really helped his career. I think he is now a dual threat in the striking and grappling, and I think he is a future world champion in the welterweight division. He is about 27 years old. He just turned 27. So, I mean, for how good he is at age 27, in the next coming years when he's 30, 31, 32, he is going to be a dangerous fighter. He's a dangerous fighter already. He's one of the best in the world already in a stacked welterweight division. But Ian Machado Gary is a fantastic fighter, and I think the sky is the limit for Ian Machado Gary. I talked about in an earlier video how I think Paul Hughes is going to surpass Conor McGregor as the face of Irish MMA, as the greatest Irish mixed martial artist of all time, as the greatest Irish fighter of all time. I think, Ian Machado Gary is going to hold a lot of records because, he's had a lot of fights at the age of 27. He is relatively active, and he's going to break all Connor's UFC records. Ian Machado Gary is a fantastic fighter. And his winning against Michael Venom Page at UFC 303, while not thrilling, really showed that he has a diverse skill set, and he's going to be dangerous moving forward. I do believe he is a future champion. At number four, I have Umar Nurmagomedov. Umar Nurmagomedov lost to Merab Dvalishvili, but I think Umar showed how great of a fighter he is. I think the fight against him with Sean O'Malley is the fight for the UFC to make. I don't think he's the level of Islam Makhachev, Khabib Nurmagomedov, his cousin and mentor. I don't think he's the level of his brother Usman, but I think Umar Nurmagomedov is a really talented fighter. The 29-year-old seems like he's the next in line to be the bantamweight champion still after losing to Merab Dvalishvili. That's going to be the toughest matchup for Marab. I think Umar is a really good fighter. I think there are, probably some gas tank issues, although Marab puts on pressure that nobody else in the bantamweight division or the UFC can on an opponent. So I think that was part of it. I think, MMA has evolved so much that it makes guys like Umar Magomedov look more human, who probably a few years ago would have looked unstoppable. But that's just how the sport's evolved. But Umar Nurmagomedov is going to be a UFC champion. I have no doubt about that. I think he's the next bantamweight champion of the world. I don't think anyone's going to beat Merab anytime soon. I think the only thing that can beat Merab Dvalishvili is Father Time, because Father Time's undefeated. That's the same thing with Pantoja. I think those are the two most dominant champions right now. But I think when Merab's time is up, because it eventually will be, comes for every champion, or if he retires, I think Umar Nurmagomedov is the guy at bantamweight. Would still love to see him fight Sean O'Malley, though. That is a fight that I think the UFC should make before they make Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili 2. At number four, we have Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat Rakhmonov, 19-0, 18 finishes. It seems like his stock has dipped a little bit following his UFC 310 performance against Ian Machado Gary. Shavkat was injured in that fight. I think there's a reason why we haven't seen him fight Bilal Muhammad or have that fight booked already. Probably May, like the next time we'll see that fight. And Shavkat was, still really good in that fight against Ian Machado Gary. He did struggle to take Ian down. Ian really showed how strong he was and that he was tougher than people thought. And that's why his stock rose. But, Shavkat's dropped because he didn't do what was expected of him and finish Ian Machado Gary. Because that's what Shavkat does. He finishes people. One performance that doesn't meet expectations doesn't mean that Shavkat still isn't the most dangerous contender in the welterweight division. Shavkat Rakhmonov is the real deal. Shavkat Rakhmonov, I think, will be a welterweight champion. Will he beat Bilal Muhammad? That's going to be tough. Bilal Muhammad is a really talented fighter. But again, he's about 35, 36 years old. Shavkat Rakhmonov's 30. Shavkat Rakhmonov is still a star in the UFC. He's one of the more evolved guys on this list. It would be probably Sean O'Malley, Diego Lopez, and Shavkat Rakhmonov so far on this list of probably the biggest names on this list already. But Shavkat Rakhmonov is a fantastic fighter. He again is a dual threat, great grappling, great striking, and he is a powerful and strong guy. He's already a star in the UFC. And I think he's only going to get bigger once he becomes a champion. And I believe he will become a champion. Will it be in 2025? We're going to find out. But Shavkat Rakhmonov comes in number four on my list. At number three, I have Usman Nurmagomedov, the Bellator lightweight champion of the world. I think Usman Nurmagomedov has to be potential to be the best Nurmagomedov, which says a lot. He's really talented. I think his striking's phenomenal. I think he's a much smoother striker than Islam Makhachev is, than Khabib certainly was, and then his brother Umar as well. He is a really talented striker, Usman. I think he's a better grappler than his brother as well. I don't think he is at the level of Khabib, or Islam Makhachev. Who is though? Those are two of the greatest of all time. Uh, but I think he is a really talented fighter. He is just 27 years old, uh, 26, turning 27 this year, maybe. And I think he's going to go in the UFC in the next year. I think he's going to compete in the lightweight division. I think he probably can become a lightweight champion. I think when Islam Makhachev moves up to 170, I think that's when we see Usman Magomedov enter the UFC, and that'll just raise his stardom even more. But to be a champion at such a young age, and PFL Bellator still have a lot of good fighters in there. Still great competition. So I think Usman Magomedov is better than those guys were at the age of 27. I think as he still evolves, I think he can be a major superstar for the UFC and potentially the greatest in that Nurmagomedov family. But at number two is the guy he just fought and beat, Paul Big News Hughes. Despite the loss, Paul Hughes has been, the story from that Hughes and Nurmagomedov fight. In just his third fight in the PFL Bellator promotion, he got a title shot, and he took Usman Nurmagomedov to the brink of losing that belt. I felt like in that fight, Paul Hughes was the aggressor later in that fight, and Usman Nurmagomedov was just holding on to defend his championship. I think Paul Hughes won that fight. The judges didn't give it to him. But Henry Cejudo, who doesn't give a lot of compliments, was calling Paul Hughes the people's champion. And that's what he is. He is the people's champion. He won over people in that fight. He was tough in that fight. He was the aggressor in that fight. That image of him bleeding and staring down Usman Nurmagomedov will live forever. That's an iconic image. And I think Hughes and Nurmagomedov are going to battle for the next, 10 years of who's going to be the best lightweight in the world. And I think it realistically is going to be Paul Hughes. I think Paul Hughes is going to be the biggest star in this sport for a long time. I know I have him ranked number two, but I think Paul Hughes has the potential to be the face of mixed martial arts. He seems like a really nice guy, really well media trained. He seems like he's like kind of like a baby face. That's what they say in WWE, what they call the good guy. He seems to be the baby face to Usman Nurmagomedov's heel. Usman Nurmagomedov saying he needed 3 to 4 fights before they had the rematch. Uh, you know, I don't know about that one. I think Paul Hughes deserves an immediate rematch, but Paul Hughes is the real deal. There's a whole video I have that I think Paul Hughes is going to surpass Conor McGregor as the greatest Irish fighter of all time, the face of Irish MMA. I think he is going to be, particularly in Ireland. I don't know if he's going to be the national brand that Conor McGregor became, but Paul Hughes is a fantastic fighter. I think he's going to be in the UFC by the time his PFL contract ends. I think we're going to see Paul Hughes and Usman Magomedov in the UFC. I have a weird feeling that that's going to be when we see it next. Hopefully, the PFL, for their sake, can get that rematch made on their promotion. But I think that's something that we're going to see in the UFC. And if Paul Hughes wins that fight, I think he's gonna be a lightweight champion of the world in the PFL. I think he's gonna be the lightweight champion of the world in the UFC. I think the same goes for Usman Magomedov, and I think these two guys are the future of the sport, and they're gonna be the two biggest stars in the sport for a long time. But number one, I still have Ilia Topuria because I believe he's going to be the face of the company within the next year. I think Ilia Topuria has the best chance of being a three-division champion that the UFC has ever seen. I know Alex Pereira does have a small chance of doing so as well, but I think Ilia Topuria, skill-wise, can go up and challenge Islam Makhachev. I think he has a really good chance of beating Islam Makhachev. If anyone who can beat Islam Makhachev, I think Ilia Topuria is the guy. That's always been my gut feeling, and I stand by that gut feeling. And I could be totally wrong, and I could look like an idiot when that fight takes place. In my opinion, I think Ilia Topuria is going to be the biggest star that the UFC has seen since Conor McGregor because he is already a global star. He's huge in Spain. He's huge in Georgia. He's huge in Germany. These are all countries that he has lived in. He's knocked out Alexander Volkanovski. He's knocked out Max Holloway, two of the greatest we've ever seen, two of the greatest featherweights of all time. My bad. But I think, Ilia Topuria will be the face of the sport. the thing is, he does seem like he wants to retire at the age of 30. Who knows? Maybe he's just kind of saying those things. He's supposed to move up to lightweight. Seems like he's fighting Volkanovski at UFC 314 after all in April. But he does seem like he wants to move to lightweight. He wants that Islam Makhachev fight as soon as possible. That's his dream fight. If he wins that fight, he is the face of the industry. I already think he is the face of the industry. Uh, how long is his career? I don't know. But Ilia Topuria really does a good job of staying in headlines. Probably the best fighter to do so since Conor. And I think he will be the biggest star in the sport. But I think Paul Hughes is right on his heels. In terms of what I think the future looks like. But right now, Ilia Topuria has such an advantage being in the UFC. Paul Hughes in the PFL. But Paul Hughes, I believe, will close that distance, and it's going to be really close. But these are the guys that I think are going to lead the next wave of MMA. Let me know what you guys think in the comments of my list. If there's any fighters that you think have potential to be some of the biggest stars in MMA over the next 5, 10 years or so. Anyone you think that's on this list that shouldn't be on this list. Let me know what you guys think. Be sure to follow the Interim Title Show on Instagram, like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.